As I walked through the valley in the shadow of death, I said, ooh, there's some Klingons and some time crystals. I can't rap. Hello interwebs, and welcome to my review of Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 12, Through the Valley of Shadows. I really don't have any super strong feelings about this episode. You know, there were some things that I thought were kind of weird and didn't make sense to me, or at least felt a little bit forced to try and make this story happen. And there were a few things that felt like I really liked them, and I thought there were some really cool ideas and some scenes going on here. There were a few things that I liked, but I wish they had just taken it the step further to really flesh it out all the way. So it was kind of all over the board here for this episode, and honestly, nothing really hit me super strongly as like, that was awesome, outside of a couple key scenes. And I'm sure you guys know exactly what scenes I'm talking about that I really loved. But generally as a whole, just kind of a tepid response to this episode. It's not bad. Not great. I'm not gonna be here like, this sucks, like I did 2 episodes ago. I'm not gonna be here like saying like, yeah, this was great Trek. It was just, you know, which is fine. You know, some episodes can be fine, but it's kind of interesting to me that we're getting to this fine, that it's still kind of just being fine when we only have 2 more episodes left in the season. So this puts a lot of pressure on those last 2 episodes of the season to really stand out. And to be fair though, the end of this episode and the trailer for next week's does really seem like it's going to be setting things up on an interesting path moving forward, and really kind of exciting storylines to develop. I'm not just talking about action. I don't always need like action to make things exciting, but really just kind of moving the story at a clip pace and kind of complete things narratively. Again, I keep saying this, I'm cautiously optimistic, but you know, we're getting down to the wire, and I still think they can pull it off. I still think they can make it work, but I'm curious to see how they do that. One thing I should also mention before I get into my full-on review is I find it interesting that this latter half of the season has really course-corrected Discovery in a way that I thought I wanted. And I do to a degree, but I think it might have gone a little bit too far the other way. And that's the pace. I said at the beginning of the season that while I really liked a lot of the exciting episodes and stuff that was happening throughout the first half of season 2, a lot of it felt like it was just happening so quickly and we weren't getting a lot of time to just sit and be with the characters. Now the opposite has kind of happened, where we have a lot of time to sit and be with the characters, but I don't necessarily feel like a lot of things are being said. I feel like we've gotten some really great character beats, and now I'm kind of like, we need something to push them forward a little bit more plot-wise for me to really start feeling these moments. Like, we've gotten a lot of stuff between Culber and Stamets, and we even got more this episode, but really it's just kind of like spinning in circles, and I like how it keeps moving forward and it doesn't all happen at once. But there's not a ton of like plot stuff that's kind of forcing them together. It's just sort of like the normal act of a relationship, an arc of a relationship that just happens to be going on in a Starfleet context. Which honestly, to a degree, now that I say it that way, it actually kind of makes me appreciate a little bit more. That actually maybe I kind of do like that, that we're kind of not necessarily, we're just kind of sitting with these characters and just kind of seeing an everyday thing unfold. And yeah, crazy stuff's going on in the background, but generally just this is how everyday Starfleet crews would be. So, you know, maybe that is kind of interesting. I don't know, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I'm kind of now having a mixed feeling on the pace of the show, now having talked it out. I really like the fast-paced, exciting stuff. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy those movies, I enjoy those episodes and scenes when things are like really actiony. And I do enjoy when things slow down and give me a beat, but I think there's some sort of a middle ground that hasn't been completely met the past few episodes. But then again, maybe my taste is just a little bit different, and maybe, you know, again, I feel like Discovery is just a show that's meant to be binged. I think this is a show that really should just have come out all at once, and I feel like I wouldn't be feeling this as hard, you know, had I just watched it from episode 1 to 13 in a week's time, say, as opposed to like watching it over like 13 or 14 weeks. The more I feel like Discovery is a show that's meant to be binged and not watched week to week. Just because I feel like it helps fix this pacing issue in a way that just makes sense as a binge show. Binge shows kind of can play with pacing in different ways. Sometimes they're successful, and sometimes they're not. Just look at the Netflix Marvel shows for examples of bad pacing. But sometimes it can work, like Daredevil Season 3. Anyways, that's enough about me ranting about generalities about this. Let's talk specifics. But before we get into that, just a couple housekeeping items. If you like this review, give my channel a subscribe. I release new reviews each and every week about this show, Twilight Zone, and hopefully new shows coming out in the future, as well as weekly video essays every Friday, and then some bonus content for you out there if you're looking for something extra. But yeah, I do release extra videos here and there. And if you want to help make these videos even better, and I mean, I know that's really hard to believe, but it can happen, you can give to my Patreon page, just like these fine people below did. Thank you so much to everyone who has given to me for this month. It's really helpful, and I'm going to be using the money to help buy new equipment and buy new stuff and actually really blow out this page to do some really cool stuff. Like, I do have some skits and ideas planned for future review videos moving forward. And that's it. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the episode. I'm going to open up with the beginning narrative of the show and then split down each individual story path that this one takes, because there's basically 3 stories going on here. So the episode starts with a really sweet scene between Burnham and Amanda, and I really liked how the opening started with a video of Burnham's actual biological mother and then switched to Amanda, getting a message from Amanda, really sort of bringing home her sort of dual mothers. And honestly, it made me think, like, Burnham has 4 mothers going on. She has Amanda, she has Dr. Burnham, her mom, and then she has the 2 versions of Georgiou. So really, Burnham's got 4 moms. And people talk about daddy issues. She's got a ton of mommy issues going on. And I kind of enjoy that sort of multiple matriarchal thing going on. But I thought it was a sweet scene. It was nice to sort of check in with Amanda and sort of get a reminder of her role that she played in Burnham's life, even with her mom. And it made sense that Amanda would contact her. And I also liked when Spock came in, and it showed that Spock did this as a kindness to Burnham, and also showed Amanda caring for both of them. It just felt like a nice, small familial moment that really rung true. It sort of gave me the sense that they are a family again. And we learn that there is a new signal over Boreth, the Klingon monastery world, so they head out to that planet to go investigate. And obviously Tyler's a bit bothered by this because Tyler has his kid there. You know, he abandoned his child there when he left the Klingon Empire. We also get confirmation in this scene that they're all talking to each other that Leland doesn't have the sphere data, which was a bit confusing because we learned that Control had 58% of the data when it was downloading it onto the Section 31 ship last time. But I guess it was just one of those things where, like, when you copy something and you cancel the copy, it all just reverts back to the original owner, so you can't have a partitioned version of the data. It's just you have all, you have nothing. But they didn't really make that clear last episode, so I like that they said that here. Should have been said last episode, because I was a bit confused by that at the end of last episode. So, and then we get a scene right after that where Michael and Tyler sort of talk about Tyler's kid. I was surprised that Tyler told Michael about her kid. And I was really happy that Michael was very supportive. She wasn't like, oh, you got kids? Excuse me, I gotta go. I wasn't really prepared to have kids at this age. No, I liked how Michael was very supportive and sort of said, you know, you could always come to me with this burden. And Tyler says to the effect, like, you know, that's something we both struggle with, because it's true. And that's probably part of why they are drawn to each other. Fine scene. I liked it. Made sense. I'm not getting any, like, big heartstring tugs like I have in previous episodes. Like, there's been some really heartstring tugging in previous episodes, whereas this one I was just sort of like, yeah, that makes sense. That was good. I liked it. Yeah, it was fine. Yeah, good. Yeah, sure. Yeah, good. Yeah, good for you. Then we get L'Rell on Disco. L'Rell's come to sort of help them get to the monastery. Now, I get the idea that the Klingons would be willing to, or at least L'Rell, because she's sort of more open about it, would be willing to help Discovery and the Federation in this situation because it is dealing with, like, the death of all sentient life in the galaxy. But it just felt a little bit convenient, like, especially, like, right after war, the Klingons are like, yeah, come into our space, come to our sacred monastery. Beam down your captain there. It's totally fine. We have no issues with that whatsoever. I would have liked some sort of infighting. Like, even if it was like a Klingon who worked under L'Rell was like, "Rah, humans, why are you letting them in here?" L'Rell's like, and L'Rell's just sort of being like, "Shut up! It means that they can help save all sentient life in the galaxy. Stupid humans, it's their fault. They should deal with it." It's like, hey, we're sentient life. I don't know. Some sort of scene like that would have helped to make it work a little bit more for me, but otherwise it just feels like, oh yeah, I guess we're buddy-buddy with the Klingons. Especially after you spent so long in episode 3 of this season, like, really building up, like, the Klingons and infighting and things like that. So it just felt weird to just sort of be like, yeah, it's fine. Part of this scene that I really loved is I did love L'Rell and Tyler's argument, and then sort of slipping into Klingon, basically arguing about their child and not being like, I don't want to reveal this in front of Pike. And Tyler's like, you know, I'm going to start talking about it wherever. And it felt very real. It felt like, you know, as a kid who has divorced parents, it felt like that sort of thing. Like, parents are, like, trying to keep their cool, but they're you know, have a disagreement of opinion. And I also, again, like slipping into Klingon, where they just sort of slip into their native tongue while they're arguing in front of Pike. It just read very real. So then we get a scene with Michael and Saru, where Michael asks to go off to the Section 31 ship, and Saru says, go for it. And we also get sort of a confirmation that Saru's like, yeah, I'm changed, I'm different. And he gives her good advice, don't let your anger cloud your judgment. And I really liked that bit. It felt like, you know, Saru's really stepping it up into captain mode. And really feels like a captain we can get behind. Like after last season, he's still, like, I liked him as a captain, but, you know, he still had a lot of work to do. And I feel like he's grown to that season. I think they really are setting him up. I would be surprised if he's not the one who steps into the captain chair at the end of this season. I may be wrong, but I think that that's where they're going. It would be a disservice to his character not to do that. So I'm going to split off down the different narrative threads here. I'll just pick up the one that's really quick and easy, is we get a continuation of the Stamets and Culber plot via Jet Reno. I'm glad Jet Reno's back. She's here. Glad to see her again. Felt like we missed a few things because we haven't seen her at all, and she's already buddy-buddy with Stamets, and we sort of get this confirmation that she's been on this ship the whole time. I wish we had just gotten a scene or two with her at some point, because it just felt like she came out of nowhere and had this pre-developed relationship with Stamets, but we never got to really see that really outside of the beginning of that relationship. So I would have liked to see maybe a scene before this to sort of read that home. Not a problem with this episode, just the series in general. It felt like, again, a casual, slow scene of what these characters do when they are at the mess hall. Just having fun playing games. I thought the game was kind of cute, and I always love seeing Linus. Linus is like now my favorite character. Linus, that guy. He is so funny. And I like that scene, and I like them sort of being buddy-buddy. And Stamets sort of feeling like left out and sort of longingly looking at Culber. I mean, I did that exact sort of thing when I broke up with some of my exes and we kind of were in the same crowds and going to the same places. I would see them and be like, oh, I miss them. And then one of my friends would invariably say, like, I thought you were over this. And Jet Reno does feel that kind of character. And then I like the scene after that where Jet Reno goes and sees Culber. We got sort of a good scene where we get, you know, see Jet Reno's trademark humor. Tig Notaro is always hilarious and funny. And we get the confirmation that Tig Notaro, Jet Reno, is a lesbian. So we have a lesbian character on the show, and Tig Notaro obviously is a lesbian, so I wasn't terribly surprised by this revelation. It was just nice, and I like their bonding over finding partners who, you know, are very demanding and have this sort of style about them and how they sort of match and find each other. And I like Jet Reno saying, you know, she died. And it's interesting because Culber was the one who died in this chance. And so you get this sort of underlying subtext. Jet Reno's sort of basically saying is like, I would give anything to be with her. You should try to get back with Stamets, or at least make that effort again. Now, I'm sure somebody out there is going to be like, she's a lesbian? Oh, they're just tossing lesbians everywhere. They're just shoving the gay agenda down my throat with this show. Calm yourself. There are plenty of straight relationships in the show, at least 2 other ones we talk about in this episode. And then that's sort of the end of that storyline. I wish we'd kind of gotten wrapped up, a bit of wrap up to that, like some other scene, like maybe Culber going to see Stamets, but I'm sure we'll get to see that in another episode. So let's focus on the next one before we get to sort of the big granddaddy plot of the episode. Spock and Burnham going on to the Section 31 ship. I like the scene where Spock comes onto the shuttle and says, you know, I'm coming with you, and Burnham sort of is like pushing back, and I just like her exasperated, like, ugh! At the end. It just, again, felt very real, felt very sibling-esque. Love that. Again, every time I see these two in a scene together, I just love Burnham and Spock's chemistry. Works great for me. This plot was a bit lackluster for me. They go to the Section 31 ship. They rescue the one living person there. There's a school graveyard of bodies that we get to see. They rescue one person, happens to be the one person that Burnham knew from the Shenzhou. At first, I thought, that's a bit convenient, and then I realized, oh, he's probably under control. Control's control. I kind of picked up on that early. I didn't really trust him, but I liked that this sort of like plot convenience thing was explained as like that was intentional. That it was sort of like he was chosen probably because Control knew that, you know, Burnham had served with him. Fun little scene between Spock and Burnham where they're talking on the shuttle, and Burnham basically rejecting this idea of like being the center of attention and center of the galaxy, which I'm sure many other fans who hate the Mary Sue idea of Burnham were basically saying like, yeah, stop being the center of attention. But I like seeing her being like, I reject it too. I don't want to be the center, and then kind of having to be thrust upon her. And I can forgive it. I think it's fine. I think it works okay that Burnham's sort of the center of this story again. It just means that if they do it again in season 3, that's when I'll be pissed. Do it twice, I can be like, that, I can buy that. I can get that. Do it more than that, though, I'll be a bit bit perturbed. But for now, I'm totally fine with it, and I kind of like her resisting that. Basically get on the Section 31 ship, and they come up with this weird plan. It's like they'll make a dummy system, Control will go into it, and they'll delete that system, and it'll purge Control. Felt a bit easy and convenient for me, so I was glad that that sort of didn't turn out to be the case, that was sort of a trick that Control had come up with because he was controlling Lieutenant Gant. And there was this really, really cool and creepy scene of Lieutenant Gant talking to Burnham. And I especially like this because we got a little bit more of what Control wants. So it's kind of the stereotypical AI thing of like, my programming is to, you know, save all sentient life, and so I'll just kill all sentient life in order to make myself the most sentient, perfect life. You know, it's sort of that idea that Ultron in like Age of Ultron, and we've seen other things do it. It's like, I'll kill all sentient life, and that's the only way to make it protect sentient life. It's the only perfect system. Okay, at least we have some sort of motivation for Control now. I like that, and I liked its sort of mindset of like, he wants to be the perfect sentient being. Kind of sounds very Borg-like, pre-Borg idea that everyone's sort of banning about as a theory that this is sort of the origin of the Borg. Maybe, maybe not, but it does sound very Borg-like when he's like, I want to be the perfect sentient being. That kind of sounds like what the Borg were like. They were trying to perfect themselves. They were perfection. Recurring ideology underneath all this. There's been enough speculation on that. I'm sure we'll find out in the next 2 episodes or so if that's going to turn out to be the case. So I won't waste too much time speculating on it here, but I do think that that might be where they're headed. Otherwise, this just seems super Borg-like, and they're not going to go for the low-hanging fruit there. I don't know. I always like the Borg. Sometimes they're overused, but I kind of like seeing this here. It would work for me if they did it that way. Other people may not. What do you think about the Borg theory? I liked the scene. There was the cool creepiness of Gant sort of being revealed. You know, if you grab that phaser, I will move in 0.8 seconds to stab you or do whatever. It was just super creepy, and his voice change was very eerie. I've liked every time that Control has appeared in some form, that it has this sort of like creepy aesthetic to it. So that worked for me. And then there was a fight sequence, and Burnham basically gets saved by Spock after this cool effect of like the nanites coming after her. I really like that. I felt kind of dumb in terms of blocking, where it was just like her shooting at it over and over and over again. I'm like, God damn, how many times can you shoot the thing? So I wish blocking had been a little bit more exciting in that scene, but it was just this cool thing of like seeing all these nanites just coming towards her. Creepy, and I like how it just stopped right in this claw shape. We learn that Burnham sort of accepts that she is, you know, the thing that Control is after. And she's like, well, maybe, you know, if Control really sees me as this dangerous variable, we can use that to our advantage. So I like her sort of accepting that mantle, and then also thinking like using it to give herself hope. Like, I control my own destiny sort of thing. Sort of echoing the end of last episode where Spock was telling that to her, but of course she was still kind of learning that. So I like sort of getting that reaffirmation here. Felt a little bit like treadle pedaling on her character development, but I like seeing her get to that point instead of just Spock telling her to get to that point at the last episode. So it made sense for me in terms of her character arc. It was sort of like an inch forward instead of like a step forward, but it was something. Okay, so now we're going to get to the part of the episode that I liked and didn't like at the same time. So we basically learned that on Boreth, there are time crystals. I don't have a problem with the idea of time crystals just in general. Like, there's other, you know, MacGuffin crap that we have throughout every single media. I mean, heck, look at like the Infinity Stones in Marvel movies. Those are basically time crystals, essentially. I wish they had a different name other than time crystal. It's just the dumbest name, time crystal. I can't, like, what do the Klingons call it? Like, Boruth. I hope that wasn't just time crystal translated into Klingon. Yeah, I just wish it had a better name. It's so blah and so weird and kooky of a name. It just throws me every time I hear it. I'm just like, time crystals. God. How many times can people say time crystals in this episode? A lot, apparently. Yeah, I guess Boreth has a lot of time crystals. Yeah, that's the thing. Pike's like, you know, you two can't go down because you're sort of emotionally compromised and things like that. All the sets for Boreth looked great. I know they were a bit green screeny at certain points, but the design I thought was really, really cool. I personally enjoyed the cool Klingon-esque design going on there. Very dark temple sort of look. Worked for me very well, but a bit CGI-y at certain points. So then we learn on Boreth that time works differently because they're on these time crystals. L'Rell and Tyler's son has already grown up and exists, and his name is Tenavik. His name is Tenavik. I missed it. I wrote it down. Tenavik, I believe. He's an adult now. I liked that concept So Tenevik takes him into the temple, and Pike gets to see some cool stuff like these trees growing up really quickly, and just sort of this explanation that time works differently here, and that he's, Tyler and Laurel's son. They're like, oh, you'll become mad if you touch the time crystal, basically like going into the innermost cave sort of thing, like very Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, where Luke goes into the forest on Dagobah and sees like his father sort of thing. Felt very similar to that sort of idea. Pike touches the crystal, and we get what we finally knew we're gonna probably see this season, is we see Pike's accident, and we see Pike in the wheelchair, and it looked almost perfectly like the old show. It definitely was updated, but his makeup looked perfect, his burn looked perfect, wheelchair looked the same. That whole sequence where Pike touches the crystal and we get to see his accident and we get to see him in the wheelchair, super well done, super creepy. You could see how Pike would clearly be completely freaked out by that. That particular sequence in here, I really liked, and I liked the idea that Pike knows about it, and by choosing to take this crystal, he has to accept that that's going to be what happens to him. That idea is fantastic, and I think will lend Pike this sort of melancholy feel throughout the last two episodes. I mean, looking at the preview for next episode, we see Pike have this very melancholy-esque feel to him, and at the end of the episode too, he just has this sort of like, yeah, I guess that's where I'm going, and sort of disillusioned with everything. And I think that that's a brilliant way to take his character. His characters have been this like pinnacle and belief in like, I'm the best of Starfleet, and kind of probably building up his ego. I mean, he's not driven by ego by any means, but we've sort of built him up as this really important, great guy. And you now see this sort of tragic end to him. And it's even made even more tragic by the fact that he had to choose it. So that concept, I think, was really, really well done and very well executed within this episode. Then we go back to the ship, and Pike tells Laurel and Tyler, like, I saw your child. And I should mention there was a good scene between Tyler and Laurel where Laurel basically accepts that Tyler has become a different person now, and sort of they moved on. I like that, and I like throughout this whole episode that everyone really didn't have a lot of conflict with each other, outside of maybe Culber and Stamets. Everyone was just generally getting along in this episode. There was no, like, a lot of infighting. It felt very, very TOS TNG-like throughout this entire episode. Everyone just working together, working on a common goal, and yeah, they had some emotional issues going on, but generally they all kind of liked each other and worked together. Not as super exciting as we normally get. You know, if people were complaining that like everyone's fighting and hating each other, well, look at where we are now, where everyone generally just kind of is lovey-dovey with each other. And it's not the most exciting thing, but it's kind of nice to feel that from time to time. So I did like that aspect of it. And I like sort of Laurel sort of apologizing to Tyler and sort of accepting that he's different and they've moved on. So here comes my biggest problem with this episode, is this end bit. Is Pike basically saying like, it's hard to explain, I couldn't explain to you why I talked to your kid. And they're just like, whoa, that's so creepy. And I feel like the episode's like trying to be like, wasn't that super weird and clever? And I'm like, it's not that hard to explain. It's like time moves differently there. Your son's a grown-up kid now. Cool. I don't know. I felt like there was more emotional stuff to mine between Laurel and Tyler to sort of be like, so my kid's growing up now, I want to go see him. And basically Pike could say like, oh no, you can't go see him. There's some sort of weird timey-wimey thing that prevents you, and sort of Tyler having to deal with that. It just felt like, oh yeah, your son's okay. He's doing great. You don't need to see him anymore. Everything's fine. It just sort of felt like that. Okay, then why was he introduced in the first place? Because then there's this idea of like, oh, destiny. Of, oh, you know, your son had to be born so that he would lead Pike to the crystal, and that's why it happened. Like, everything happens for a reason sort of thing. But I'm like, really? Was that, like, destiny? Like, he just kind of walked him down a corridor and had him hold a crystal. Did Tyler's son really have to be the Klingon that did that? It could have been any Klingon. It didn't have to be their son. I just wish there'd been some sort of thing that, like, it had to have been their son. Like, maybe they were all about to kill Pike, and Pike hears him say, like, I am blah, son of none. And he's like, wait, I knew a son of none. Are you their kid? And then you're like, oh, he's grown up now. It just felt like very easy, and it felt like and that saves his life, and that's what lets Pike get into the time crystal. Like, something that was like, the fact that he was Tyler's son was the reason that like made this happen. But really it would have happened with any Klingon at all. And that's what bugs me. There's this sort of forced idea of like destiny, which I think works great in terms of like Pike's destiny moving forward and them trying to like fight, can you fight destiny? And that sort of idea moving into the final episodes, like there is a destiny for everybody, but also we're trying to fight destiny. Great sort of conflict and pull of strings sort of tugging ideas going on there. And sort of this idea even going into the end is like, oh, we could stop control and Pike will be hurt, or Pike can live his normal life and control will end. And sort of it's like sacrificing yourself for the greater good sort of thing. Great idea. Love that. But this minor plot in the episode of like, oh, it was okay for your son, just like, you're not minding the emotional drama that could come out of like Tyler not being able to see his son. Hopefully it'll come up in later episodes, maybe. But it just seems like they're resolving it here. And then you're sort of saying like, oh, that was all for a reason. When really it didn't feel like it had to be his son at all. That's the thing that bugged me. I just wish there was a little bit more conflict in that storyline. I like where they were trying to get to. I like that they were trying to get to Pike seeing his future and accepting that fate. Great idea. But everything around that beat just feels like it was just like, let's walk down a corridor and get things done. So that really bothered me. I think that's what really, the part of the episode that I really just don't like. It felt really easy, and it felt like you were not taking the gifts that you were giving yourself. You know, talk about in writing is like, you write these gifts to yourself, you write to get to these points. The hard part is coming up with all these backstories. And now you've gotten to the point where you just have characters who can play off of each other in interesting ways. Why don't you do that? Teed it up. Why aren't you hitting it? And so that was bothering me. There's just so many missed opportunities in that whole storyline that just bugged me. So the payoff is interesting, but the road to get there was not. The road to get there was just walking down CGI corridors on a Klingon planet. So I think that's probably my biggest rant, and probably was my biggest rant of this whole season. This legitimately bothers me. And I like the rest of the episode. The rest of this episode is good, and I like the setup it's giving characters moving forward outside of Tyler on the route, but I like it set up for Pike and Burnham and all these other characters. That works great. This storyline saddens me. It felt like a missed opportunity that I guess I'm just going to have to be like, all right, well, we're going to move on. Because I doubt we're going to come back to it. It seems like they're kind of wrapping it up. And I guess it's fine. It could have made this episode so much more interesting if you just had taken that little extra step to sort of give me, it could have, all the same events in the episode could have happened. Everything could have happened, but it could have been mining a little bit of pathos and drama out of it, other than just Pike sort of getting things explained to him as he walked down a corridor. So sorry to end on a sad note, but that was sort of my biggest problem with the whole episode. Everything else about this episode was either really good or solid. There was nothing that I thought blew me away outside of the Pike scene, seeing his future and accepting it. That I thought was the standout, great, amazing moment of the episode. That worked really well for me. Everything else was solid or good, and then everything else revolving around the Pike, L'Rell, Tyler storyline was just disappointing. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry I feel bad that I'm ending on such a sad note. It was fine. It's a fine episode. I don't mean to seem like I'm angry about it. It just, this storyline bothered me. Yeah, we're all good. Things are good. Everything's happy. Thank you so much for watching this review. I really appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel and maybe consider giving to my Patreon. Also, don't forget to check out my Twilight Zone reviews, which will be going up on Saturday starting next week. And then once Discovery ends, it'll be going up on Thursdays. And also, if you're interested in L'Rell and Klingons, I did a video on L'Rell just a few weeks ago. Go back through my video feed. I'm really proud of that video. It's sort of analysis of the themes surrounding her character. I absolutely adore her character quite a bit. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, please check out that video. Anyways, enough hawking my wares. Until next time, live long and prosper.